They tell you inflation hurts everyone equally. That prices go up. Money buys less. We all tighten our belts together. That's the story. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Every inflationary period quietly chooses winners and losers before prices even finish rising. And the people who get rich aren't guessing. They're standing on the right side of a deal most people never realize they signed. Let's start somewhere ordinary. Imagine two neighbors on the same street. Same age. Same income. Same grocery store. Same gas station. Inflation hits 5%. Then 8%. Then it sticks. At first, both complain. Milk costs more. Rent climbs. Credit card balances grow teeth. But 2 years later, one neighbor is stressed, cutting expenses, feeling poorer every month. The other looks oddly fine, even relaxed. Same inflation, different outcome. That gap isn't luck. It's structure. And right now, that structure matters more than it has in decades. Inflation isn't just a rise in prices. It's a redistribution mechanism. Quiet, technical, boring on the surface, violent underneath. And the deal is simple. If you owe money, inflation works for you. If you are owed money, inflation works against you. But that's only the first layer. Because the real advantage isn't just debt. It's the kind of debt. The timing of it. And who controls the levers when inflation forces the system to react? To understand who gets rich, we need to slow this down. When inflation rises, money loses purchasing power over time. That part, everyone knows. What fewer people internalize is that debt is fixed in nominal terms. If you borrowed $100,000 at a low fixed interest rate, inflation doesn't increase what you owe. It shrinks it in real terms. Your paycheck rises slowly with inflation. The value of what you owe quietly erodes. From the borrower's perspective, inflation is a partial debt forgiveness program. From the lender's perspective, it's a leak. Now, zoom out. Who are the biggest borrowers in the economy? Households with mortgages. Corporations with long-term financing. And above all, government. Governments are the largest debt holders on Earth. And inflation is one of the few politically acceptable ways to reduce the real burden of that debt without calling it default. No announcement. No apology. Just time and higher prices doing the work. This is why inflation is rarely fought aggressively at first. It's uncomfortable, but useful. It eases balance sheets at the top of the system before it ever reaches your grocery bill. But here's where the quiet deal becomes more selective. Not all borrowers win equally. If your debt has a variable interest rate, inflation turns on you. If your income doesn't adjust upward, inflation turns on you. If your assets don't reprice upward, inflation turns on you. Inflation only rewards borrowers who locked in yesterday's money while earning tomorrow's money. That's a small group, and they know exactly who they are. Now look at the other side. Who loses? Anyone holding cash. Anyone holding fixed income assets paying yesterday's yields. Anyone whose savings grow slower than prices, which sounds abstract until you realize that's most people. Savings accounts. Pensions. Wages that lag. Inflation doesn't steal loudly. It just refuses to keep up. And while the public debate fixates on grocery prices, the real transfer happens quietly through balance sheets. But this still isn't the full picture, because inflation doesn't just change the value of money. It changes behavior. When inflation rises, central banks react. Interest rates go up. Liquidity tightens. And this is where the second deal kicks in. Rising rates hurt people who need to borrow now. They barely touch people who borrowed before. So, inflation followed by higher rates creates a moat around earlier borrowers. The ladder gets pulled up. If you bought assets when money was cheap, inflation lifts their nominal value while higher rates protect you from competition. If you didn't, entry becomes expensive. Housing is the clearest example. Someone who locked in a mortgage at 3% doesn't fear inflation the same way someone trying to buy at 7%. The asset inflates, the debt stays cheap, the alternative becomes unreachable. That's not market magic. That's timing embedded into policy. Now let's widen the lens. Corporations with pricing power thrive in inflation. They pass higher costs forward faster than wages rise. Margins compress briefly, then recover. Small businesses without leverage or brand power get crushed between rising costs and reluctant customers. This is why inflation accelerates consolidation. Big firms survive, small ones disappear. And investors notice. Capital flows toward entities that can reprice quickly and borrow cheaply. Everyone else is rationed. Inflation pretends to be neutral, it's not. It amplifies power. And the final layer is the most uncomfortable one. Inflation rewards proximity to money creation. The closer you are to newly created money, the more you benefit before prices adjust. Governments spend it, banks lend it. Asset markets absorb it. By the time it reaches wages and savings, the purchasing power is already diluted. This isn't a conspiracy. It's plumbing. And the irony is brutal. The same people told inflation is temporary or manageable experience, it lasts, and pay for it longest. While those with assets, leverage, and access quietly This is why inflationary periods often coincide with rising inequality, even when employment looks strong. Numbers improve. Balance sheets diverge. Now, compare this to the public narrative. You'll hear inflation framed as a moral failure. Too much spending! Too much stimulus! Too much greed! You'll hear calls for discipline, sacrifice, shared pain. But the underlying system doesn't share pain evenly. It assigns it. The deal was signed when money was borrowed, cheap, assets were priced low, and policy favored stability over restraint. By the time inflation becomes visible, the outcome is mostly locked in. And here's the quiet absurdity. People who benefited most from inflation often publicly oppose it. The loudest? Because once they've crossed the bridge, they want it burned. Higher rates protect their advantage. Lower competition preserves their position. Inflation gets them rich. Disinflation keeps them rich. That's the full arc. So what does this mean long term? It means inflation isn't just an economic variable. It's a filter. It decides who advances and who stalls. Who refinances and who rents. Who compounds and who catches up forever. And as global debt levels rise, inflation becomes less a mistake and more a tool. A dangerous one. A tempting one. Because every time inflation solves a debt problem, it creates a trust problem. People notice when the math works against them repeatedly. They notice when saving feels pointless. When wages chase prices. When stability becomes inaccessible and systems built on trust don't fail loudly. They thin out. They hollow. So here's the question to sit with. If inflation quietly decides who gets rich, and if debt, assets, and access determine who benefits, what happens in a world where more people understand the deal, but fewer can participate in it? Because inflation doesn't just change prices, it changes belief. And once belief breaks, the math stops working the same way.